I'm about to say when you start over anyway, because I was chopping through that thing. Welcome back to
Heart Matters with James and Jessica Carter is simply our way of inviting people into our lives.
This is James and Jessica Carter with Heart Matters. This time we'll be talking about spending time together.
Man, life can get so busy sometimes. We end up setting aside time for work and to spend time with friends and taking care of the kids, going to see family. But how often do you set aside time to spend with your spouse? How intentional are you about spending time with your spouse? We try to set regular date nights.
Yeah. Well, at first we didn't do that. So it was very tough when it come down to, spending time, especially with me. I was the first, She would come into my music room because obviously, I'm a producer.
All day.
Yeah, so I'll be in my music room all day playing music. I'll tell her I'll be out in about 2 minutes. And that 2 minutes turned into, 2 hours, 3 hours. So I had to learn balance with that. And, she had to put me on a strict schedule. But over time, I began to learn, how to balance everything out and not spend too much time with my music, opposed to spending time with my family.
But the key is balance.
Yeah.
It's important for you guys to have your own things that you like to do, but it's also important that you do things together. That's how you build your relationship and you keep your relationship going strong, because as life goes on and you're doing your own thing, he's doing his own thing, eventually people begin to grow apart. And the reason why you're growing apart because you're not intentional about growing together. Exactly. So that's why we're saying that it is important that you set aside time to spend with your spouse. Like I said, so often we set aside time to do everything else with everyone else, but we don't really think about how important it is to do things with our spouse. We just think that they're always going to be there. We've had friends who have been married for 20, 30 odd years, some of them, and all of a sudden they come, and they come to us and we begin to talk, and it's like, well, I don't understand where he is and I'm trying to figure out where she is. And in my mind, I'm saying, you guys have been together for so long. How is it that you don't understand each other? And as we begin to talk, we begin to get down into some things and realize that they got so wrapped up in raising kids, having a career, and they just put each other on the back burner. So once the kids were grown and out of the house, they had absolutely no clue who their spouse had become, because they each had gotten into their own little world and not created a world together.
And it's really easy to do that because you find yourself getting into life and getting into your job, and you come home and you just kind of have a roommate, really, you just come home, see your wife. And because think about it, before you guys became married, you were really courting each other, so everything was about that other person, literally everything. So you was calling, you was standing up on the phone, the old folks say, breathing on the phone.
You was trying to get her.
Exactly. So you guys are doing, you were doing that once, all night, all the time. That's all. She was the only thing you thought about.
No, you hang up first.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we did to them. Yeah. But no, yeah. So you do that. Yeah, she took me back for a moment, But yeah, you do that. But then once you get married, I guess most people think that I got that person now. So you kind of fall off into this complacency, if you will, and so now you stop doing the things that you used to do. You don't have date nights anymore. You don't just, as the guy or the woman, you don't just sporadically do something like bring home flowers or chocolate or say, I still love you. Don't forget the fact that I married you because I love you. And sometimes you got to understand that the kids were a product of that marriage, not the fact that the kids are there to separate your marriage. That's another thing that some people do. Like my wife just said just then, the kids will come in, and either the wife or the husband will cherish the kids more than they do the other spouse. And that can be a real bad thing, because like she said, once those kids are grown and gone, the kids got to get their own life. And I don't know if y'all saw it, but some people grow so attached to their kids that when their kids get married, they're still in their kids' life, and they begin to mess up their kids' marriage, and because their marriage is now messed up because they haven't been spending time like they were supposed to throughout the years. And if you're not careful, those years will start passing you by, year after year. Before you know it, you're 10 years married, you're 15 years married, you're 20 years married. And if you haven't spent that quality time that you needed to in those earlier years, then before you know it, like she said, you have grown apart and you won't know that person anymore. And in your mind, it'll be easy to get a divorce because really you've been living single. So you have to be careful. You got to ensure that you take that time to spend that quality time. And not just not just together. You got to get couple friends, you know, because it's good sometimes to hear that other people are going through what you're going through. You know what I mean? So it's really
or have gone through what you've gone through. Now you can get insight from a different perspective. He said something when he was talking. He said you have to be careful. And so often we're not careful about how we handle our relationship. We just kind of want to, well, if it happens, it happens. Or we make excuses as to why we don't spend time with our spouses. We say stuff like, well, I don't have time, I have to work, and after work I got to do this with the kids, or going out costs money, we have bills and all this stuff. You can, if you have to do a date night at home, put the kids in their room, set rules and guidelines between this time and this time. Don't bother mommy and daddy. We're going to watch a movie together. You guys go in your room and play, or whatever you have to do to make that time. You have to be intentional about this thing. And if you have family members that are close to you that you can call and say, hey, can you watch the kids for a couple of hours? We just want to go out and get dinner together. Whatever you have to do to make sure that you guys get that time together, do it. And because I feel like things that are important to us, we make time for those things. Yeah. So you're not going to tell me that your marriage is important to you, but you don't make time to spend with your spouse. So no more excuses. If you need to find a babysitter, find a babysitter. We might be able to help you out depending on where you live. If you live outside the Madison, Huntsville area, can't do anything for you. But we'll try to see what we can do to get you some suggestions on babysitters. But be intentional. I mean, don't let excuses stop you from spending time with your spouse. One of the main excuses we hear, one of the excuses that I used to hear from my husband is, well, we got to do these bills and, you know, it costs money to do some of the things you want to do.
Think like that.
Is that for women, it's not always about the money. It's about the thought. The fact that you thought about me. Maybe you went out and you can pick flowers out of the yard for all I care. It's just the fact that you felt like you wanted to give me something, or you wanted to do something with me. And not every woman wants you to give her something. Sometimes women just want you to sit there and listen to her talk, because some of us can be talkers. But the key importance is knowing what your spouse needs. Some men just don't want to talk, ladies. So sometimes he just want to sit down and watch the game. So what if you don't like football? He does. Sit down, watch the game with him. Don't ask a whole lot of questions. Just give him that time, just so that he knows that you care about him enough to take an interest in things that matter to him. Just like we want them to do for us, we got to do that same thing for them.
So, speaking of time, we're going to go ahead and close this out, conclude it. So the last thing I would say, I will leave you guys with this. You have to learn how to manage your time and manage your relationship. Because if you don't, life will manage you. Remember that. If you don't manage your relationship, life will manage it. And before you know it, you'll be so out of control that you can't understand what, you won't know where the years went and what happened. So remember that. Do good in your guys' relationships. And we'll see you next time.
And if you have topics you would like for us to discuss, hit us up at our email address right here on the bottom of the screen. Peace out.
All right.